Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Today on Earth Focus, an interview with Dr. Robert Corell, chair of the Climate Action Initiative. He's presently on leave from the Heinz Center for Science, Economics, and the Environment. Dr. Corell was one of the experts who presented the United Nations Environmental Programme's Climate Change Science Compendium to the public in September 2009. This report, based on the latest science, says that climate change is happening faster and on a larger scale than predicted just 2 years ago by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Dr. Corell speaks with Earth Focus correspondent Miles Benson about climate change and the impact that it will have, coming up on Earth Focus.
Dr. Corell, the scientific community, the world scientific community, in 2007 made some pretty dire predictions about the directions we were heading in terms of climate change. Now you've produced a report that says, oh no, things are much worse than we thought.
IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, actually freezes their analysis about 2 years before they release the report. So their data that based on that report was 2005, okay? So between 2005, there's 4 more years in which a lot of scientific work has been done. Big projects looking at more detail, particularly looking at what's happening to Antarctica and Greenland in terms of melt rates. It's pretty clear now that they did not know in 2005 that there's a serious net loss of water from both of those continents, more from Greenland. Antarctica being bigger takes a little longer to do that. So there's a lot more science on the table.
We're more certain of the data.
Exactly.
We're more certain of the science, and it's pointing to a more dismal future than we thought.
That's exactly right.
How bad does it get?
Well, it gets pretty serious for us. IPCC has this whole group of scenarios, about 47 of them, but 6 of them are sort of the most optimistic to the most pessimistic. But quite frankly, we're still in that 3.5 to 4 degree world centigrade, which puts us well above 6 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're on a path that is sort of just outside of the worst case at IPCC. That was shocking. We didn't see that in 2005 and 6. We didn't have the data. It's all very recent sort of data. In fact, statistically significant in the last 2 years. We need to get that message out because a 6+ degree world, we're going to transform it. We're going to see 1 meter or more of sea level rise around the world. And there are places where that's just an untenable situation. Take one of the lowland countries like Bangladesh. I was in a meeting with this minister of environment, and I said, well, something like 30 or 40% of your population is going to be moving. It was at a UN environment meeting. He leaped up at me and he says, no, you're wrong. It's going to be 60% of our people are going to have to move. Because not only does the flooding come in, but when the storms come in, they go in much further. So they're going to displace a lot of people. But if you come back home to the United States, the southern part of Florida is gone. The coast along...
Gone, you mean it's underwater?
Underwater. If you draw a line sort of from Miami, everything south of that, the whole Key West and all the Keys, they're underwater, they're gone. And people then begin to understand the story. I was at a meeting once when a very senior official in Florida stood up in the meeting. When I showed them the picture of what Florida was like, he said, oh my God, I just bought property down there.
You're talking about that happening by the end of the century or sooner?
We're seeing more recent data just in the last few months that the melt rates of both Greenland and Antarctica are faster than we anticipated even a year ago. And it's all of that ice that's melting that ends up in the ocean that causes the ocean to rise. There are 2 other factors that cause the ocean to rise. One is the ocean is warmer. And when a body of material, like water, gets warmer, it expands. So it's pushing it up. And most of the sea level rise we've seen over the last 50 years or so has been the warming of the ocean. Well, now we're warming the ocean in an accelerated fashion. So that effect is going to add to just the meltwater that you put in. But there's another factor that's going to hit the Northeast and the Gulf states, and that is we're changing the circulation pattern. Think of about a body of water moving. The body of water moving is due to the fact that there are different elevations in the water. I mean, you can't get a river to flow unless it's going to go downstream. The same thing happens in the ocean. You can't get a current unless one body of water is higher than the other and causes a current. Well, it turns out that we have two bodies of water that end up being higher than normal, one off the northeast coast and one off the Gulf Coast. And both of those add another 50% to sea level rise. So we could easily see regional sea level rise significantly more than a meter, and therefore we're going to see something, I say about a foot every 20 to 25 years.
Starting now?
Starting right now. Starting right now.
Do people understand generally how bad this can really get?
At 6 degrees, the Amazonia, which is one of the most beautiful tropical forests in the world, will transform itself into a desert. We're going to see water depletion, say, in the southwest of the United States, because we see a drought that's at least 20 or 30 years in the future, maybe longer. We're going to see transformation of woods in the northeast. Hardwoods, you know, like maples, will move out. They'll be up in New Brunswick and in Canada. So, you know, if you're a farmer and you've depended your life on maples and maple sugar and all of that, the tourism that comes with it, and that's going to move out, well, then you know it's going to affect me.
Tipping points, or approaching tipping points, and if we go past them, we'll be in irreversible territory. How soon do we have to get a grip on this?
There are a couple that scare me, and they are the following. In particularly the Arctic, there is frozen in both the land and in the frozen ground underneath the ocean, the coastal ocean, is somewheres like twice as much energy contained in the methane stored there as we have used in the entire period of time we've had fossil fuels, the last 200 years. As we warm the planet, that methane starts to come out. Now, methane is a greenhouse gas. In fact, it's 20 to 30 times more powerful than CO2. Yes, it stays in the atmosphere for less time than CO2, but it still has the effect, and if it keeps coming out, that's a tipping point, because the only way you stop that is take the globe and put it in the refrigerator, and you can't do that overnight. You can't cool the planet down. So that's a serious, because that's an accelerating effect, and we call that positive feedback, but it'll accelerate the process, make things warmer and warmer and warmer. The second one, it has to do with the mere existence of carbon dioxide sitting above the ocean in higher levels than in the past. The ocean, if you give it 10,000 years, can absorb that CO2 and sort of like its own bicarbonate of soda, it keeps it sort of out in control. But if you do it really fast, it can't respond. So what we're seeing is the ocean's becoming more acidic. As this CO2 is sucked into the ocean, it creates carbonic acid. So right now the oceans are about 30% more acidic than they were about 100 years ago.
Does this interfere with anybody but shellfish?
All the way up the food chain.
All the way up
All
the
the
food
way
chain.
So it starts at the level where you've got your calcium-based phytoplankton, little tiny plants, all the way up to lobsters. And you know, that's the bottom of the food chain. They become fish, and all the way up to whales. And that whole system has dramatic effect on the land in terms of other life that's connected back to the ocean. So we're looking at an effect on the food chain.
Which we sit on top of.
Exactly.
Faces a collapse.
It absolutely faces real challenge and ultimately a collapse. What troubles me is that we're having trouble understanding that as a human society, that we don't really understand it. On the other hand, humanity, when it's faced with ultimate crises, sometimes often says, uh-oh, I got to deal with this. We haven't gotten to the uh-oh point yet where humanity says, we got to deal with this. I think there's going to have to be almost a cultural shift in how we think about our future.
Any idea how to bring that about?
Yes, I believe there are two things that will make a tremendous difference, and that is if we focus on our children today so that they become aware, they're much more adaptable and they're building their own culture and so on. The other is educate women around the world, because the education of women in places that are like Africa and other very emerging economies will transform their ability to face a new world.
What's your expectation? Are you a pessimist or an optimist?
People call me the optimist because I believe we can in the end, and if we can create an educational perspective for the world, then we'll all begin to better understand that there is a challenge before us and it's going to affect us very personally everywhere on the planet.
Re-education of the world is a very, very long and slow process. We don't have that much time, do we?
No, but we have to do it anyways.
But you're an optimist anyway.
Right, indeed.
Dr. Corell, thank you very, very much.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate very much your interest, and we appreciate the word that you can help us share with the public that this is an issue that will affect all of us and that we are in it together.
Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world. To learn more, visit linktv.org.